You've clearly shown you're unable to manage the Department of Defense, but what I'm most concerned about are three specific areas: your operational incompetence, your managerial incompetence, and your budgetary incompetence.
So one man in Washington made a huge mistake. That man was none other than Pete Hegseth. His slip didn't just waste time, it cost lives. And when Congress found out, Representative Mikie Sherrill tore him apart, holding nothing back.
Your training at Fox News has let you spin months of dangerous dysfunction and incompetence into catchy phrases like restoring the warrior ethos and increasing lethality. But the truth is, it's really been chaos at the Pentagon under your leadership.
Mikie Sherrill accused him of taking months of danger, failure, and bad decisions and dressing them up in flashy slogans. By linking him to his TV background, she painted him as a performer instead of a leader. The tension in the room shifted, and he looked less like someone in control and more like someone being exposed live in front of Congress.
According to news reports, in your first week on the job, you got confused in a National Security Council meeting and thought President Trump wanted you to stop all aid to Ukraine. In a well-functioning administration, you would have asked for clarification before.
Mikie Sherrill's attack went from sharp to devastating. She accused him of making a massive mistake in his first week, confusing a critical National Security Council meeting and believing the president wanted all Ukraine aid stopped. This painted him as careless and reckless, costing the U.S. millions and leaving Ukrainian soldiers without equipment on the battlefield.
Vital military aid heading to the front lines turned around, costing the U.S. millions of dollars and depriving Ukrainian soldiers of equipment they needed to fight Russia. So, Mr. Secretary, can you explain how exactly you misunderstood such a monumental presidential order?
The room could feel the pressure build. Her words cornered him and demanded an answer he couldn't easily give.
One of many fake news headlines we've dealt with.
When Pete Hegseth finally responded, he brushed it off as just another fake headline. But his quick dismissal felt weak next to her accusations, making the gap between her claims and his defense obvious. Instead of easing the tension, his words only kept it hanging, leaving everyone wondering if he'd crack under the pressure.
President Trump told you to halt military aid to Ukraine on January 30th?
As is often the case, highly ideological and very ill-informed reporters love to speculate about things they know nothing about in order to spear President Trump and myself.
When pressed, Pete Hegseth deflected, blaming biased media for twisting the story instead of answering questions about halting military aid.
So why did aid start just a couple days later?
I'm saying the reporting is inaccurate, ma'am.
I don't think that's correct. So let's move on to your managerial incompetence. I think we can see why you misunderstood the president, because you're obviously misunderstanding my questions.
By the time Sherrill asked why the aid restarted days later, he was on the ropes, stumbling, offering no proof, and trying to move on. She calmly cut in, saying if he could misunderstand her simple question, he might also have misunderstood the president's order. Her line landed like a punch, leaving him shaken and trapped.
Less than a month into the job, you fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, C.Q. Brown, and the chief of naval operations, Lisa Franchetti, without cause. And to this day, you still have not provided an adequate explanation for removing them. As far as I can tell, you fired C.Q. Brown because he was black and Lisa Franchetti because she is a woman.
Sherrill then moved in for one of her hardest hits yet. She reminded everyone that less than a month into the job, Hegseth had fired top military leaders without giving a clear reason, including the nation's highest-ranking officers. She pointed out the timing, the lack of explanation, and then dropped the most explosive charge of all, hinting that his decisions may have been driven by bias rather than performance.
So nearly 4 months later, we still don't have a new nominee for Chief of Naval Operations. News reports, and you can contest it, but I'd love to hear your answer.
She followed up with the consequences. Months had passed and still no replacements. Reports claimed top admirals were turning down the job. Her final question landed like a hammer. When would Congress actually see a new nominee? The moment left Hegseth boxed in. Her words painted him as reckless, biased, and unable to fill vital leadership posts. By layering accusation after accusation, she was putting his judgment and integrity on trial right there, live in front of the cameras.
Ma'am, with all due respect, I would suggest not believing every headline you read.
With all due respect, I'd like your nomination. When will we see it?
there has not a single admiral or any military official has turned down a position that's been
So when will we
provided.
see your nominee for the Chief of Naval Operations?
In due time, for all the right reasons.
Hegseth tried to sound calm, but his words gave him away. He repeated himself, saying not to believe every headline, dodged the question, and then offered no real answer. He insisted nobody had turned the job down, but still refused to give a timeline, falling back on vague promises about the right reasons and due time. It came off as shaky and defensive, like someone trying to hold the line while under heavy fire. His answers felt small next to Sherrill's direct, detailed accusations. The contrast made the tension even higher, with Sherrill looking sharp and in control while Hegseth stumbled and stalled.
Again, I think we've seen the managerial incompetence. Okay, let's move on to budgetary incompetence. You missed the deadline to submit a draft defense budget to Congress, which makes it impossible for us to complete our work on the NDAA or appropriations and makes it more likely you'll receive delays in funding you need for new acquisitions, programs, and other priorities.
Sherrill wasn't done. After hammering his leadership failures, she turned to his spending. She laid out how he had blown past deadlines, missing a key defense budget submission and making it impossible for Congress to do its job. She warned that this delay risked slowing down weapons programs and starving troops of critical funding.
Additionally, you're blowing money on poorly conceived operations and vanity projects for President Trump.
Then she went in even harder, listing off massive spending sprees she called vanity projects. Hundreds of millions for a private jet retrofit, tens of millions for a parade, billions poured into overseas operations that left nothing changed on the ground. Each number landed like a blow, showing a picture of reckless spending and broken promises.
Retrofitting the Qatari jet to serve as Air Force One will cost about $400 million. The parade in D.C. this weekend will cost upwards of $40 million. Your bombing campaign in Yemen cost about $1 billion, and a week later they were having missile strikes in Israel. Your operations in L.A. will cost tens of millions of dollars, and you claim to be cutting costs at the Pentagon.
The effect was brutal. Instead of a strong, disciplined leader cutting costs at the Pentagon, her words painted Hegseth as a man bleeding money, missing deadlines, and leaving America weaker. With every detail, the tension in the room built higher, the accusations piling up with no clear defense left for him to hide behind.
All I see are wasted dollars better spent addressing our most pressing threats like China. So, Mr. Secretary, what priorities have you cut funding for to pay for these projects?
Ma'am, I would just say your list left off securing the southern border.
Sherrill closed her point with a knife-edge question. After rattling off the giant costs, she demanded to know what priorities had been cut to pay for them, pointing out that the money could have gone toward real threats like China. Hegseth stumbled, saying her list forgot about securing the southern border. It was a weak deflection. No numbers, no explanation, no accountability. His response sounded like an attempt to change the subject rather than answer the question. The contrast made the moment sting even more. Sherrill stood calm and precise, while Hegseth looked like a man dodging bullets, his defense crumbling under the pressure of her accusations.
What priorities have you cut funding for to pay for these projects?
We make trade-offs every day, and I would imagine what we want to spend on is quite different than what the previous administration did.
Well, I think
we
the
made
American
those changes quickly, and they're reflected in this budget, and we're very proud of them.
I think the American people can see why I'm so concerned about this incompetence.
When Sherrill pressed again, asking exactly which priorities he'd cut to pay for his costly projects, Hegseth tried to sound confident. He said trade-offs happen every day and hinted that his spending choices were different from the last administration. But instead of giving hard details, he wrapped his answer in vague language about being proud of the changes. It came off like another dodge. He hadn't named a single program he cut or justified the price tags. Sherrill's calm closing line drove the point home. After all these exchanges, she was still waiting for a straight answer. The moment left Hegseth looking defensive, vague, and under fire, while she appeared steady, factual, and in control. Sherrill had walked through every failure, every unanswered question, and every weak excuse, leaving Hegseth cornered and exposed. His vague answers and deflections only strengthened her case. What started as questioning turned into a public dismantling, and the tension in Congress was impossible to ignore.